The downfall. Emma Reynolds straightened her blazer and took a deep breath as she walked toward the gleaming Vertex Technologies headquarters. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade, almost blinding her momentarily, an ironic foreshadowing she would only recognize later. At 32, Emma had worked her way up from administrative assistant to project coordinator through sheer determination and late nights. Today marked the culmination of 6 months of preparation, the Meridian project presentation to potential investors who could take Vertex from a successful tech company to an industry leader. Morning, superstar, greeted Olivia, the receptionist, sliding Emma's visitor badge across the counter. Big day, huh? Terrifying day, Emma corrected with a nervous smile. But I've triple-checked everything. As Emma rode the elevator to the 28th floor, she scrolled through her tablet one last time, reviewing the financial projections that the CFO, David Mercer, had sent over late last night. The numbers seemed different from what she remembered, but with David's reputation for last-minute perfectionism, she assumed he'd made necessary adjustments. The conference room was already filling with investors in tailored suits when Emma arrived. She nodded politely to familiar faces while setting up her presentation. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Julian West entering the room. At 40, the CEO of Vertex Technologies commanded attention without effort. His quiet confidence and piercing gaze had earned him both admiration and fear throughout the industry. Everything ready, Ms. Reynolds? Julian asked, his voice betraying no emotion. Yes, sir. Just finalizing the display settings. The presentation began smoothly. Emma articulated the vision for Meridian, a revolutionary healthcare data platform that could transform patient care across rural communities. The investors nodded approvingly, scribbling notes. Then came the financial section. As you can see from these projections, Emma continued, clicking to the next slide, our initial investment will... She froze. The numbers on the screen didn't match her notes. Instead of the conservative growth pattern she'd prepared, the slide showed absurdly optimistic projections numbers that promised returns no reasonable technology could deliver. These figures seem ambitious, remarked an investor, leaning forward with narrowed eyes. Are you suggesting a 300% return in 18 months? Emma felt her mouth go dry. There must be some mistake. These are the official Vertex projections, interrupted David smoothly from across the table. Though perhaps Ms. Reynolds hasn't been briefed on the latest models. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Emma frantically searched for the correct file on her tablet, but everything had been replaced with the exaggerated numbers. She glanced at Julian, whose expression had hardened to granite. Perhaps we should take a brief recess, Julian announced. His controlled tone belying the anger Emma could sense building. In the hallway, Julian's composure vanished. What happened in there? I don't understand. These aren't the numbers we prepared. David sent revised files last night, but I didn't realize they'd been completely altered. Don't blame David, Julian cut her off. This presentation has been your responsibility from day one. Do you understand what just happened? You've made Vertex look either incompetent or dishonest. Sir, if I could just explain, no explanations. We've lost credibility with every investor in that room. Julian ran a hand through his dark hair. I'm sorry, Emma, but your position here is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear your desk. The next hour passed in a blur as Emma packed her belongings under the watchful eye of a security guard. Colleagues averted their gaze as she walked through the open office for the last time. Her career and reputation in tatters. Outside, rain had begun to fall, matching her mood as she huddled at the bus stop, clutching her box of personal items. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Theo. How'd the big presentation go? You're going to be famous. Emma closed her eyes, fighting back tears. How would she tell him that not only had she lost her job, but she could no longer afford his final year of engineering school? How could one mistake, one that didn't even feel like her mistake, derail everything she'd worked for? As the bus arrived, Emma took one last look at the Vertex building, never imagining that in 3 weeks' time, She would cross paths with Julian West again under very different circumstances. Asterisk. Unexpected revelations. Julian West stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over the skyline. 2 weeks had passed since the disastrous Meridian presentation, and something still didn't sit right with him. "Sir, I've pulled the records you requested," said Natalie, his executive assistant, placing a folder on his desk. Julian nodded without turning. "And the security footage?" "On your tablet, sir. Though I'm not sure what you're hoping to find." After Natalie left, Julian began his investigation. He'd built Vertex Technologies from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar company by trusting his instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming that he'd missed something important about Emma Reynolds' dismissal. The email records showed a clear trail. At 11:47 p.m. the night before the presentation, David Mercer had indeed sent Emma a revised financial report with a subject line reading, "Updated Meridian figures replace all previous." Julian frowned. Why would the CFO send critical revisions so late? Opening the security footage, Julian watched Emma enter the building early on presentation day, looking confident but nervous. Then he spotted something curious: David arriving even earlier, logging into Emma's workstation while she was still in transit. Julian's jaw tightened. He forwarded through more footage until he found what he was looking for: a private meeting between David and Winston Chambers, their biggest competitor's VP of development, 3 days before the presentation. The pieces suddenly aligned with disturbing clarity. A quick call to the head of IT confirmed his suspicions. The exaggerated figures hadn't originated from finance at all. They'd been created on David's personal laptop and deliberately planned to sabotage the presentation. Emma had been the perfect scapegoat. "Get me everything on Emma Reynolds," Julian told Natalie the next morning. "Personal address, employment status, everything." The file revealed a life of quiet dedication. Emma had been raising her younger brother Theo since their parents died in a car accident 8 years ago. She'd put herself through night school while working full-time to support them both. Theo was now in his final year of engineering studies at the State University, funded primarily by Emma's income. Julian's conscience twisted uncomfortably. He'd fired a woman who exemplified the very values he claimed Vertex stood for: integrity, perseverance, and loyalty. And he'd done it without proper investigation. Finding Emma proved more difficult than expected. She'd moved from her apartment, and her phone had been disconnected. Finally, after a week of searching, his driver spotted her working at Henderson's bookstore in a quiet neighborhood across town. Julian entered the small bookshop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped inside, immediately enveloped by the comforting smell of paper and binding glue. Emma stood behind the counter, organizing a display of new releases, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked thinner than he remembered, shadows beneath her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. She glanced up at the sound of the bell, her professional smile freezing when she recognized him. "Mr. West," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you browsing for books." "I'm not here for books, Miss Reynolds." Julian approached the counter, suddenly uncomfortable in his tailored suit among the cozy shelves. "I'm here to speak with you." Emma's colleague, an older woman with kind eyes, appeared from the back room. "Emma, dear, why don't you take your break now?" "I'll cover the register." With obvious reluctance, Emma led Julian to a small table in the corner of the shop's attached cafe. For a moment, neither spoke. "How did you find me?" Emma finally asked. "I have resources," Julian answered, then softened his tone. "I needed to speak with you about what happened." "I think you made your position quite clear, Mr. West." Her voice held no bitterness, only resignation. "If you're concerned about legal action, don't be. I've accepted responsibility for the mistake." "That's just it," Julian said, leaning forward. "It wasn't your mistake. David Mercer sabotaged the presentation to undermine our company while negotiating a position with Chambers International. He deliberately set you up to take the fall." Emma stared at him, processing his words. "You investigated?" "I did. Too late, I'm afraid." Julian placed a file on the table between them. David has been terminated, but that doesn't undo the damage to you. Emma opened the file slowly, reading the evidence Julian had compiled. When she looked up, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I appreciate you telling me this, but it doesn't change much. I still lost my apartment since I couldn't make rent. Theo had to take out emergency loans for his final semester. She closed the file. I'm trying to rebuild. Julian hadn't expected this calm dignity. He'd prepared for anger, accusations, perhaps even a demand for compensation. Julian hadn't expected this calm dignity. He'd prepared for anger, accusations, perhaps even a demand for compensation. I understand you're staying with your friend Presha until you find a new place. Emma's eyes widened slightly. You've been thorough. May I ask about your brother's studies? Something protective flashed in her expression. Theo is brilliant biomedical engineering. He's developing prosthetics that respond to neural signals. He'll graduate in 4 months, assuming the loans come through. Julian nodded, thinking of his sister Rebecca, who used a prosthetic leg after a childhood accident. The coincidence felt meaningful somehow. Miss Reynolds, Emma, I made a serious error in judgment by firing you without proper investigation. I pride myself on being fair, but I failed that standard with you. Julian met her gaze directly. I owe you an apology and much more. Emma looked down at her hands. Thank you for clearing my name, at least. That means something. As rain pattered against the bookshop windows, Julian realized he'd come expecting to simply offer Emma her old job back, a transaction to clear his conscience. But sitting across from this woman who had lost everything because of corporate betrayal yet maintained her dignity, he suddenly knew that wasn't enough. I didn't come here just to apologize, he said carefully. I came to offer you something that might interest both you and your brother. Emma looked up, caution and curiosity mingling in her expression. What kind of offer? Julian West, known throughout the business world for his calculated decisions, found himself speaking from a place of intuition rather than strategy. Something that has nothing to do with your previous position and everything to do with who you are. Asterisk, what exactly are you proposing, Mr. West? Emma asked, her guard still firmly in place. I've recently established the Vertex Foundation for Adaptive Technology, Julian explained. It's a separate entity from Vertex Technologies, focused on developing affordable medical innovations for underserved communities. We're particularly interested in accessible prosthetics, like what your brother is working on. Emma's expression softened slightly. And what would this have to do with me? I need someone to run it, someone with integrity, attention to detail, and the ability to see beyond profit margins. Julian leaned forward. I'm offering you the position of Foundation Director. Full autonomy, a substantial budget, and the opportunity to bring your brother's research into development once he graduates. Emma stared at him, clearly caught off guard. That's generous, but why me? I have no experience running a foundation. Because you have something rarer than experience, character. Julian handed her a business card. Think about it. Call me when you decide. Asterisk the proposition 3 days later. Emma stood in the sunlit conference room of the Vertex Foundation's newly renovated offices. Floor 2 ceiling windows overlooked a community garden, deliberately distinct from Vertex Technologies' steel and glass headquarters across town. As you can see, we've prioritized accessibility and sustainability, Julian explained, guiding her through the space. The foundation will operate independently, with its own board and funding structure. Emma ran her hand along a reclaimed wood table. It's beautiful, but I still have concerns about my qualifications. Your resume isn't why you're here, Julian said, stopping to face her. When I fired you, I was operating on incorrect information. But now I have correct information about your character, your brother's research, and my own mistakes. I'm offering you this position because it's the right decision for everyone involved. Emma considered his words. And if I accept? You'll oversee a team of researchers and outreach coordinators, manage a $10 million annual budget, and report directly to me as chairman of the foundation's board. Julian handed her a contract. Your first project would be developing affordable neural responsive prosthetics, starting with your brother's research. You're serious about this, Emma said. More statement than question, entirely. Then I accept on one condition. Emma met his gaze steadily. No special treatment for Theo. His work succeeds on merit or not at all. Julian smiled, extending his hand. I wouldn't have it any other way. Asterisk rising together 6 months later, the Vertex Foundation had become Emma's second home. Her office walls displayed prototype designs and thank you letters from early recipients of their medical devices. Theo had joined after graduation, heading the neural interface team with infectious enthusiasm. The response sensitivity has improved by 32% in the latest trials, Emma explained to Julian during their weekly meeting. We're on track to release the first affordable neural responsive wrist at 1/10 the current market cost. Julian nodded, watching her animation with quiet admiration. Under Emma's leadership, the foundation had accomplished in months what might have taken years under a different director. Her combination of compassion and practicality had transformed his vague vision into tangible reality. There's something else, Emma continued, more hesitantly. Rebecca called again about joining the advisory board. Julian tensed at the mention of his sister. Their relationship had been strained since he took over their father's company, transforming it from a defense contractor into a technology firm against her wishes. She's qualified, Emma added gently. And having someone with lived experience using prosthetics would strengthen our mission. I'll consider it, Julian conceded. Knowing Emma was right, later that evening. They worked late finalizing presentation materials for their first major funding announcement. As midnight approached, they ordered takeout and sat on the floor of her office surrounded by charts and prototypes. Why did you really start this foundation? Emma asked suddenly. It's so different from Vertex's core business. Julian was quiet for a moment. My father built his fortune on military contracts including landmines. Rebecca lost her leg to one of his company's devices when we were children. He never forgave himself. He met Emma's eyes. When I took over, I changed our direction completely. Rebecca thought I was erasing his legacy rather than redeeming it. This foundation is my attempt to create something healing from that history. Emma reached out, briefly touching his hand. Thank you for trusting me with that. Something shifted between them that knit a connection deeper than professional respect, yet cautious and undefined the following week. Their moment of connection was tested when Technology Blog Tech Scrutiny published a scathing article, West's Charitable Veneer, Billionaire's Foundation headed by former employee. He fired PR stunt or guilty conscience? The article dredged up Emma's dismissal, framing the foundation as Julian's attempt to buy good publicity after corporate missteps. Board members called emergency meetings, investors expressed concern, and Emma found herself once again at the center of unwanted attention. We should release a statement, Emma suggested during a tense meeting with Julian. Clarify the timeline and David's involvement. That would only extend the news cycle, Julian argued. Better to focus on the work and let results speak for themselves. This isn't just about you or me, Emma countered, surprising herself with her boldness. It's about the foundation. People who need these devices don't care about our personal history. They need to trust our mission. Their disagreement simmered for days, creating the first real friction in their working relationship. The tension peaked when Emma discovered Julian had canceled her appearance at an important medical technology conference. You're undermining me, she confronted him in his office. If you don't trust me to represent this foundation, it's not about trust, Julian interrupted. It's about protection. I don't need protection, Emma replied firmly. I need respect as the director you appointed. Either you believe in me or you don't. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken emotions neither was prepared to address. Finally, Julian nodded. You're right. Attend the conference. Say what needs to be said? At the conference, Emma spoke plainly about the foundation's origins, including her firing and reinstatement. But rather than dwelling on past mistakes, she focused on transformation, how failures could become catalysts for change. When met with courage and accountability, Her honesty resonated widely, generating positive coverage that emphasized the foundation's innovations rather than its origin story. When she returned to the office, she found Julian waiting with a simple note. "You were right. Thank you for reminding me why I chose you." Beyond redemption 1 year after Emma's appointment as Foundation Director, the Vertex Foundation's neural-responsive prosthetics program had helped over 2,000 patients access technology previously available only to the wealthy. Theo's designs had won international recognition, and Rebecca West had not only joined the advisory board, but had reconciled with her brother after years of estrangement. On the anniversary of Emma's first day, Julian invited her to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. The setting was intimate candlelight, a corner table, Julian in casual clothes rather than his usual suit. "Are we celebrating something specific?" Emma asked as they were seated. "A year of transformation," Julian replied, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "For the Foundation, for many patients, and for me personally?" Emma smiled, remembering their first uncomfortable meeting in the bookstore. "It's been quite a journey from firing to dinner dates. Is that what this is?" Julian asked softly. Emma felt herself blush. "I didn't mean to presume. I'd like it to be," he interrupted gently. "If you're comfortable with that." Before Emma could respond, their conversation was interrupted by an elderly man approaching their table. Leaning on a cane, "Excuse me," he said, his eyes on Emma. "I recognized you from the medical journal articles. My granddaughter received one of your Foundation's prosthetic hands last month." His voice cracked slightly. "She played piano for the first time in 4 years yesterday. I just wanted to say thank you." After the man left, Emma and Julian sat in emotional silence. "That's why we do this," Emma finally said. "Not for a redemption or to fix the past, but for moments like that." Julian reached across the table, taking her hand. "You've taught me something essential. Emma, true second chances aren't about erasing mistakes, they're about creating something better because of them." "We've both learned that lesson," she acknowledged. Squeezing his hand. As they walked along the riverfront after dinner, the city lights reflecting on the water, Julian stopped and turned to her. "When I offered you that position, I thought I was giving you a second chance," he admitted. "But you are actually giving me a chance to build something meaningful, to reconcile with Rebecca, to become a better person." Emma smiled up at him. "Maybe that's what second chances really are, not one person rescuing another, but two people finding a new path together." Under the night sky, Julian drew her close, their professional boundaries finally dissolving into something more honest and profound. Their kiss was gentle an acknowledgement of the unique journey that had brought them to this moment. The foundation they'd built together would continue to transform lives, including their own. What had begun with a career-ending mistake had evolved into something neither could have imagined, a partnership built on integrity, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. "What happens now?" Emma asked softly as they walked hand in hand toward the future. Julian smiled. "Something even better than redemption possibility,"